It's Lori Eve Tatarsky.
Thank you. So anyway, as Dina has said, I'm Lori Tatarsky, Lori Eve Tatarsky, and I'm a survivor and thriver of mental health challenges and addiction. There's an expression that goes, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. I have thankfully and gratefully taken the first step and then some. It has at times been a perilous road with many pitfalls, yet the cinematic view tops of the metaphoric mountains has been splendorous. I grew up in Long Island, New York, to a family full of high and deep emotions. A laugh was a belly laugh. A tear was many tears was being shed, and a scream was a mere rage. However, I was allotted many opportunities as a child. We were an upper middle class family, so having the finer things in life was possible. But more than that, I was supplied with values and given love. And I think that has taken me through many of my dark moments. I wasn't an extremely religious person, but I always sensed there was a God. And from a young age, I would pray that my family and friends would remain happy, healthy, and safe. And for so very long, my prayers were answered. Then tragically, at the age of 17, my father was taken from me on my 17th birthday. He died of AIDS from open heart surgery from bad blood. That totally destroyed my life and set me on a very dark path of destruction. He passed away in front of my eyes, and I wondered, would my heart ever be the same? Everyone mourned the loss of my father, taken far too soon. And my mother would ultimately never be the same without her love of her life or high school sweetheart. Soon after that, I attended college in Boca Raton, Florida. I wanted to obtain a degree in sun worshiping. But all kidding aside, I was studying mass communications and journalism, something I had always wanted to do from a young age. So I really do believe that as we're growing up, we have a sense of what we want to do in our adult life, but things get in the way. Trauma, dark situations, we get lost, we fall into addiction, we fall into illness. But I believe innately, I believe in our inner child, we have a sense of who we are to become and what we are to do with our lives. Some moments of your life you will never ever forget. They ruminate in your mind over and over again. It was a summer evening at college, and I was at a friend's house in Maryland. We were at a wild party full of sex, drugs, and drinking. I ingested a tab of acid and made a very poor choice. I would take a trip that would seem endless, relentless. I drove home on acid to Long Island. I was experiencing psychosis and fell into a deep, dark depression. That was my crippling introduction to a world of chaos, suffering, stigma, and injustice. Yet, it was also an involvement of a world of growth, strength, awareness, love for others, and the process of learning to love myself. At 21 years old, I was diagnosed with bipolar type 1. I had a mental illness. Would I be deemed as insane? What if I had diabetes? Would that deem me as insane? Bipolar type 1 is manic behavior that can last up to 7 days. It can be constituted as insomnia, spending sprees, promiscuous sexual acts, irrational and paranoid thinking, psychosis, and reckless behavior. I've been privy to all of it and then some. Many hypersexual relationships with countless nights with no sleep, bankruptcies, thinking others were out to harm me or laughing at me, near-death car wrecks which left me with a broken back and neck injuries. The depression side of the disorder was almost indescribable. I had no motivation. I felt bedridden for weeks. It was more like a bed rotting. I certainly wasn't living. I was merely existing. I didn't want to shower or take care of my personal hygiene. I would isolate, withdraw from everyone and all activities I once enjoyed. How I dreaded these long, dark days. I felt like a burden, worthless, and acted on self-injurious behaviors. I was put on all kinds of psychotropic medications. I was put on more combinations than Subway sandwiches. But it was just a matter of time before I would become immune, and the doctors would have to find, quote, unquote, the perfect cocktail. Many times I chose not to take my medication because of the horrid side effects, such as weight gain, dry mouth. Speaking of that, tremors, constant fatigue, and the list goes on and on. My emotions felt numb. I felt like I had flatlined. I certainly didn't feel like a speaker with an amplifier anymore. When I was on the right meds and working my coping skills and delving into my spirituality, there's nothing I felt I couldn't accomplish. But when the meds weren't working and I wasn't doing my part in my recovery, I felt hopeless. I gasped for air, for some solution. It got so bad, the depressions, that the doctors recommended ECT, which is electroconvulsive shock treatment. It was certainly shocking to me. I found it barbaric. They would produce a seizure in my mind, in my brain, to release serotonin. And in my belief, it caused short-term memory loss. At times, I do have to admit, it did help, but looking back on it, I believe it's barbaric, and that's my opinion. Because of my mental disease, when my condition got very severe, I was hospitalized in an inpatient institution. It was a bleak environment. It was dreary and scary, and it left me with post-traumatic stress. I've ran the gamut of experiences. I've had a successful career as an account executive in the advertising arena for a long period of time, where I was really able to shine. I've also had long stretches where I was unable to work due to my ill health. I've eaten at the finest of restaurants. I've also been the first on the line of soup kitchens and food pantries. I've lived in elaborate homes. I've also been dropped off at homeless shelters and lived with family members. Today, actually, it's just, sometimes we look at how the universe works. 3 years ago to this day, I was suicidal. I had been off medication for 3 days, and I went missing, and I was driving, and I lost control of my vehicle, and I went smack into the Tappan Zee Bridge guardrail and hit a cop car. And by the grace of what I believe in God, I'm here today. So I know there's a purpose for my life, and we all have a purpose, regardless what it is. So we have to fight the good fight, and we have to keep giving it our all. Within the last couple of years, I revisited my aspirations. I published a memoir that Gina spoke about. This is my book. It's called I Dare You to Walk in My Shoes, and it's exactly what it says. Don't judge me until you walk in my shoes, and everybody has a story to tell, and everybody has a voice and deserves the right to be heard. And if we can all just come together in our truth and our courage. Also on the cover, there's a girl coming out of a cage, going through the clouds back towards the palace. That's what I feel like. I feel like I'm finally coming out of my cage, and I'm going through the clouds, and I'm getting back to the glory of the castle. The greatest aspect of my recovery is it's threefold. It's spiritual, it's mental, and it's physical. You can't have one without the other. And unless you're working all three of these, it's not going to work. I can tell you from my own experience. And never give up, because just when you think it's not going to get more hopeful for you, there's a bright rainbow around the corner. And now I'm going to share some snippets from my book to give you a little idea of some of my writings. And then I'd like to open the floor for your input and questions. Is that okay with everybody? The first piece I want to share with you is called Utopia 33 Euphoria. And it's a piece I wrote with three very important therapists that I worked with in my life that made a huge impact on who I am today and how I got to survive all of this. 1993 to 1997, J. Bell Joanne. 2004 to 2011, Youngblood. 2012 to 2014, Tanya. Utopia 33 Euphoria, dedicated to three angelic healers. I have arrived, survived my diagnosis, and the poor prognosis of my mental dis-ease. Texas, the unexpected nexus of my despair. Before I got there, I theorized the Lone Star State as a breath of fresh air. And in that great big state, an angel was waiting there. J. Bell, Joanne, my therapist, my friend, when the confusion was too much, when tides of bipolar terror came in under the pale moonlight of self-distrust, when I could not be kind to myself or those I met, but with her sense of benevolence, I could forget the errors of my single-sided arrogance. You reap what you sow, she said, and she sowed this in me in every session, in every action, until I was able to do unto others what others would. And New York, it came calling back, the life of an advertising exec, account manager to be exact, all that pressure, that night cry for solace. That's when Youngblood, my therapist here in the business of her proud vibrancy, would with me connect. Yet I was faced with the problem of progress. From her the answers I would implore. Youngblood, oh how wrong it is to be grouped here in this place with these sick people. But Lori, you are not better or worse. Only concern yourself with change. With my overcoming your sense of entitlement, and then from this world or any other, you won't be estranged. I worked with her for 7 years. We sandblasted my darkest, deepest fears, honest and sincere. There were so many issues. There weren't enough bulk volume Kleenex tissues. A recurring theme, that river of judgment from me did stream. My childhood brought me sense of entitlement, and with the healer, we toned it down as a team. Tanya, loving and nurturing, she was my greatest fan. Even through my 8 hospitalizations in a 2-year span. While under her care, life was less than fair. I had 8 hospitalizations in a 2-year span. I was like saturated worms suffocating in a can. At the time, I was receiving shock treatment on a regular basis. Before the shock treatment, I had oceans and oceans of emotions. So I kept asking her, why can't I cry? Did my spiritual insides die? Why can't I feel true happiness and belly laugh like the good old days? I constantly pray this was just a temporary phase. What happened to all my creativity, sensitivity? Then the psychosis rocked my sanity, and I attempted suicide for the 2nd time. And there she was to cut through my black and white TV thinking, to comfort me to the ICU when I was still reeling, to use 20 years of experience in calming my errant ways of sinking. I attempted to master my mind over pain, to quell the quelling, crutching voice driving me insane, driving me, to try and end my life again. Would this fatalistic behavior end? When? Oh, when? She taught me to remain humble and not be so grandiose, to have patience with the other patients, that each individual has worth. She stated to me, everyone has a varying level of mental illness. Some of the people won't change, grow, or get well, but the way I put it, they stay stuck in stillness, unchanging hell. Many months after I had this suicide attempt, Tanya questioned if she was such a wonderful therapist, why couldn't she preempt? I explained that I was so out of touch with reality. If I dared share my thought, I'd be locked away for good. I was so afraid. I don't think anyone could have understood. Traveling so many miles, traversing so many trials, there is a sense of transition from the heating center of a once pantsed heart. I have arrived. I have survived the insidious, peculiar ride. I am fully aware, mindful, and alive. A new chapter, a new book. So that's one. Hey! I am a food addict. I've been dealing with it since the age of 10. My lowest weight was 128 pounds. I used to be a bulimic, and my highest weight was 300 pounds. I've also had gastric bypass surgery 20 years ago, and it has really at times destroyed my life, the addiction. Well, this is a little thing I wrote initially, a little snippet on USA, University of Self-Awareness, and then I'll read one more thing. University of Self-Awareness. Once upon a time, in a land so far away, there thrived the angel of awareness. Awareness is the epiphany of recovery. recovering lost dreams from false hopes, rediscovering the rhythm of savoring a moment of innocence. She would spread her wings so vastly that all the beautifully colored butterflies would emerge from their hard shell cocoons and follow her in awe. With her flight, she would recite the lyric so melodiously that all the soaring birds would gloriously chime in. So that's kind of like a vision I have one day, that we'll all kind of chime in and be together in recovery and unite. And then my last piece I wrote about 20 years ago, and it was kind of like a premonition of what I wanted my life to be. And that's called Intrinsic Fate. Here we go. Intrinsic Fate. And this was written in 2001. Today in this universe, I have felt enlightenment. I was given insight. I have dealt with some of my fears. I have stood sincere. I feel like a lucky little girl who must constantly play, who must constantly whirl. I want the fame and fortune for the reasons of thee, to always give of my heart and live life according to me, to always keep learning, to love unconditionally is a yearning, to make my dreams real is an innate burning. Flames that are raging with purpose and passion, to succeed for myself in an orderly fashion, to take who I am and stand proud and stand tall, to listen to my heart and mind and sing and welcome it all, to thank those up above for the ability to love, to travel to find some more birds of my feather, to bask in the sunlight, yet to tackle the stormy weather, to cascade from the darkness to the light, and to reach altering heights, to thank those beloved up above for the capability to love, for the opportunity to live, and the insatiable need to always give, to accept my loved ones unconditionally for who they are, and to shine bright with all the other stars.
What a beautiful way to end.